also, Orkies, I just started recording now, but it's fine because I think people will know in the YouTube channel that this is the Vice-Prim interview, and we have 3 formal panelists, and we have Jessica and Vhudi on the side, just waiting for some low-hanging fruit to drop and an out of the blue question from them. So now we have asked, how does one apply to be Vice-Prim in the respective communities that our panelists represent? So Leanne from Meerhoff is going to start the answering session off.
Great. So I know in Meerhoff, it works a little bit different to other Tygerberg residences. So how it works with us is you can't get to the position of Vice-Prim without first going through the position of Haka. So essentially, you have to apply to be a Haka member. And how that works is you just send in your ordinary application, you have a caucus that happens, and then the House votes for the Haka members. And once all the Haka members are appointed, that group that was appointed, say for example, it's 12 newly appointed Haka members, they then go ahead and anyone who wants a position of Vice-Prim gives a very short speech, but only to those 12 members. And then out of those 12 members, everyone will vote for who they want to be their VP. And that's how you go about getting that position in Meerhoff.
Nice. Okay, so if you apply for Haka with the sole intent to become Vice-Prim and you don't get it, you'd have to resign from Haka.
Yep, you'd essentially have to resign after a couple of hours of your appointment.
Tough times. We love to see it. We love to see commitment. All right, thank you. That was very concise, but very, what's the thing? Comprehensive. That's my buzzword in all these interviews, comprehensive. Okay, Christopher, tell us more about eNkanyini. Used to be Kerkenberg.
Yeah. So ours was a little bit different. Yeah, I guess the seed planting starts when someone comes to you and says, hey, I think you should run. I see these qualities in you. And then that's when, the idea is planted. But anyway, so yeah, for us, you have to specify, are you running for Prim, Vice-Prim, or just general Housecom? So it wasn't a prerequisite for you to be in the Housecom. So yeah, the votes were separate. So the whole House votes for who they think should be the Prim and who they think should be the Vice-Prim. But yeah, that's pretty much how it went.
Okay, and then after that, it's the rest of the Housecom.
Exactly, yes. So first the Prim is appointed, the Vice-Prim, and then the Housecom, and then, released respectively.
All right. Thank you for that. Very clear, very understandable. We love to see it. And then Shannen, last but not least.
Okay, so in Francie, ours, I think, is the reverse of Kerkies. So our 14 Haka members get assigned, or they get voted in. You go through caucus, the whole, I almost said circus, the whole business. And then from those 14, whoever applied or indicated that they would like to be Prim or Vice-Prim, would like to run for it, then gets picked from the 14. So Mama's dying. They have separate they have separate caucuses. So after the caucus of the Haka, we then have the Vice.
Did she freeze on just my device or on everyone's devices? I just need to make sure. Shannen, you froze for a bit there. Okay, it was like for 2 seconds.
Did I freeze?
Yeah.
Excuse. So what happens, or what I said in those 3 seconds, is that we have 2 VP finalists from whoever applied or how many applied, and 2 Prim finalist candidates. And these get, and then those people, those 4 individuals then have caucus by themselves. or not by themselves, but those four have caucus, and then Vice-Prim and Prim gets picked from those four, but they are on the 14 haka as well. So that's it.
Thank you. Getting a little deja vu here. Also, I should announce to the people that I was definitely in his Francie at some point in time. But I promised to show no bias to Shannen in this interview.
Show all the
She
bias
will
that you
not
want.
get the easy
You don't
questions
mind.
and get the hard questions. That's not at all how this is going to go, but it might be how it's going to go. Just a warning. I don't know. Maybe we should ask Jessica if there's anything different. I was like, Shannen, not least, just and I knew I'd say so. Don't worry. So you've all essentially mentioned that there is definitely a caucus involved at some point in your Vice-Prim journey, be it to get onto haka like in Meerhoff, or to actually get the role immediately, like with Francie and Old Kattenberg. So I know the caucus. The reason I laughed when Shannen said circus, because I know a lot of people think caucus and instantly circus comes in the mind. It can be very scary to think of and very stressful to think of. And you watch other people go through it, and you might watch it and go, there's no way I could actually survive a caucus. But obviously, the three of you survived caucus, and you thrived at a caucus or two to get to where you're at, or where you once were. Golden oldies. So, what are your tips for caucus? What are things that you were worried about that weren't necessarily worth worrying about going into caucus? What are some of the things you did to make caucus less stressful for you or to prepare you better for caucus? Just what is your advice for someone who really wants to be Vice-Prim but is genuinely just afraid of caucus? Caucus is the thing that's making them think twice about it. Chris, because you switched your video off, we'll start with you.
Okay, yeah. So I think the first thing I'd say is to speak to people around you, to seek counsel, in essence, because not everyone's going to give the same point of advice. So try to hear as much from as many people as possible. And then I think if you think you're going to avoid stress, then it's not going to be a thing. There will be stress, but don't fight it, use it, to keep you proactive and responsive to the questions that may be asked. And I think one thing that really often happens is that people don't really read your applications. So just to put a few key brief points from why you ran in your speech. Another thing would be to be wary of making promises in that sort of setting. But I think the easiest thing is just to make sure that you understand what is being asked and make sure that your point is brought across in whatever way.
So good. Thank you, Chris. I love that you're mentioning speaking to the people around you, and speaking to different people as well, because you emphasize that, which is really good. Speaking to your group of friends is not the same as speaking two random people in one corridor and another set of people in another corridor, another set of people in a block, or however your space is designed. Because you don't just want to hear the thoughts that your family has about you running for the role, because no one's going to look you in the eye in your family and go, don't do it. Even if they do, you might not necessarily believe them or listen to them as well as you would to someone random who's lived with you in the passage for a while, who's seen how you are and how you interact with the red structure or PSO structure. So that's really good. And I love don't fight it, use it, the stress. Yeah, there's going to be stress buzzing around caucus. And it doesn't mean that you are a weak candidate or that you shouldn't be there just because you're stressed. Everyone stresses about one element or the other. I know I was stressed about my outfit of all things. Like, forget the answers. I was just stressed about what I was wearing. So there's going to be something, and don't think that the stress is the reason why you shouldn't do it. This isn't one of those things where it's like, if it stresses you out, then it's for you. No. There's going to be a little stress at some point in the journey, or maybe all points of the journey, but it's good. Like, it's good stress. It's growth stress. All right. Thank you, Chris. Let's go to Leanne.
And Nick. You know what? I will never, ever forget that caucus stress. I will never forget it. My heart was racing for like 2 days. I don't know if I've ever in my life experienced panic like I have before my caucus. And you ask practically what you can do to try and lessen that panic. I don't think you can ever get rid of it because it's a big thing that you're running for. And the culture of caucuses seem to be not really questions that the House asks you about why you're running for the job or why you think you'll be good for the job. It's more questions directed at your character. And I think that that's what makes people more scared to run for any position that requires you to step forward. Yeah. But practically what I did, I remember, I think I did it a week before the time. I'd go to random people because I wasn't as stressed about delivering my speech, but more the questions that had come. So I'd go to random people and sort of have a mock caucus and ask them to ask me anything they'd want to ask anyone running for the position of VP. And from there, you realize how prepared you are or how unprepared you are. And those questions they asked were fire. But I believe that prepares you well for standing in front of a house of odd of 300 people. So practically that's what I did. And then also just name the basic things about your house, like what's your house's core values, who your res head is, all those basic things that people expect you to know.
So good. Thank you. Yeah, I definitely always emphasize to people, you don't want to spend so much time preparing for the unexpected questions that you neglect the questions that you really should be expecting. If you don't know what the role of a res head is, if you don't know what your house's values are, if you don't know what time quiet time is, like, you don't need to know your constitution verbatim, but it's great if you know what's happening with the economy. That's really lovely. But as clever as it will look for you to know how to do all the math about what happened with the 500 billion for COVID, if you do not know the values of the house you're saying you're stepping up to lead, it can take away from a candidate who's actually really strong and really good. And it's just because you overlooked the actual basics. Not because you're going to be a poor leader. It's just one of those things that it reflects really badly in a caucus and it beats down your confidence. And I love, Leanne, that you're being so like vulnerable and honest about the panic. I laughed so hard in my head when you said you've never been in a panic like that, because I was like, I wonder if she's ever been part of like a resus team or something, because if caucus was number one panic, but it's good. It brings it into perspective. Yeah, no, definitely that stress is there. It's real. I know I had it. I think I had a bit of it even after the caucus, just like a remainder from pre-caucus stress. But love the mock caucus practical tip. And not just doing the mock caucus with people that love you. Do it with people, with anyone. Rather have people ask you questions that make you realize how underprepared you are or may be in the private setting of a room, than go, I'm not going to ask any questions. I'm just going to face the fire at caucus. So love that. Love it. Yeah, and you mentioned that the questions are character based, which is very, very true. I know in a lot of the caucuses I've been in, it's more, yes, there are people that definitely want to know what your vision is and what you're going to do and how, but a lot of the questions are, who are you? Like, who are you to lead this space? So, and that doesn't necessarily have to be a scary thing. It just means coming into caucus, you definitely want to know who you are and why you're doing this and what about you makes you really good for the role that you're standing in, or trying to stand in. Shannen, we're coming over to you.
Okay, so I think Christopher and Leanne mentioned some really nice points, and you as well. And when she said they come for your character, sis, they came for my character. I don't think I got a single question about what are your views or your visions or what do you think should happen. It was, and I think it's also just a dynamic of the house that I do represent. And it's, yes, we know that you can lead according to the Constitution and we know that you can do what is asked of you. We want to know, what are you going to do differently about it? And I think that is what a lot of people look for in, I don't want to say younger because we're not, you guys aren't old, but I do feel like I'm the baby of this group. So speaking from now, like the first years and the second years that we get now and what they expect from their leaders, it's quite different to what people that have been on campus longer expect from their leaders. So for me, it was a thing of having to speak to like generational gaps, if I can quote a consultant that quizzed me on that. I obviously spoke to Wama and our previous vice-prims and Ria and Saki as well. And then I had to speak to the first years and the second years and also my peers. And the two, like I want to say the two levels was quite different because what Ria's advice was something that the first year, second year hasn't even thought about yet. So that prepared me for caucus, especially in a house like Francie that still has people in fourth year, maybe fifth year living there, and first year and second year living there. And then for the stress, I'm a person that tends to avoid stress. So if it's there, I'm just gonna pretend like it's not there, and and use that adrenaline. Like I just stress to me is adrenaline, so I'm gonna do that. And in preparation for it, also, Wama, I remember your outfit. You were wearing black jeans and the purple jersey, but the black jeans with the hole. I mean, anyway, and preparing for the questions, especially the type of questions that you know you're going to get, it was just a thing of you need to know who you are. There's a reason you applied to be VP, and some of those reasons might not be what other people deem good reasons, and some of those reasons are what other people deem great reasons for being or wanting to be a leader. And you also need to understand that balance, that you're not going to satisfy everyone with the answers that you give at caucus. You're going to ruffle some feathers and people are going to try and find the negative in what you are saying. But the majority of the crowd are trying to find the positive in what you're saying. So I want to say that there's no wrong answers, but if someone asks you, what's the quiet time in France, you better know that it's from 8 to 1, because if you say 12, I'm going to come for you. So that is just, that's what I can say, what caucus was like to me. And definitely be prepared to be put on the spot because you have availed yourself for it. And that spotlight's going to be on you throughout your term. So learning how to handle it, it definitely lessens, but learning how to handle it as you go on just becomes, it just makes you stronger. You become a great person, you grow, you don't take nonsense anymore. So it definitely helps you.
Yeah, so good. And yeah, I really love the point that you bring about the like addressing the generational gaps, and being prepared that a particular generation's need and vision for a leader might be very different to a student who's been at Tygerberg for a while and has seen certain things, have been frustrated by certain things, versus a student who's fresh out of matric. Yeah, and just learning how to incorporate all of that into what you want to present at caucus. Yeah, and if you really don't know the quiet times, you know, if you get a really basic question at caucus and you know that you don't know the answer to it, my strategy would just be to say, you know, in all honesty, do we even need it? Okay, that is your plan Z. That is your final, everyone knows you don't know, and you just have to get out of the situation. If you're asked about quiet time and you don't know, just go, in all honesty, do we even need a quiet time? Like, we should actually
The
start
best one is,
quiet time.
yeah, or say, you know what, we're busy revising it, so it could change during my term. So
Yeah, like venture your own. Just be like, I think we should revise the quiet times anyway. I mean, how do you guys feel about 9 to 9? So if you really must find a loophole, you will find one. You will find one. Have your plan Zs in your pocket. If all else fails, just say we don't need it. So Shannen, you touched on something that is sparking my next question. I love it. Love it when panelists do this, because it's like you brought the question upon yourself. So you mentioned while you were speaking that there's a reason you're applying for Vice-Prim. And I think that it's a lot of people know maybe already why they're applying for Vice-Prim. Some people might need a little help and advice to shape why they want to apply for Vice-Prim. And I think one of the things that a lot of people who want to run for the role are thinking of is, how does being Vice-Prim differ to being Prim? And you can answer this in as many facets that you want to cover as possible, like practically, constitutionally, what your responsibilities are, meetings, whatever it is, what you have to deal with. Yeah, just how does Vice-Prim differ from Prim? And yeah. I'll leave it. I don't want to make it too specific. I'll leave the panelists to interpret this as they wish. You can go for personality, you can go for constitutional role, you can go for all of them. Yeah, Shannen, I'll start with you because you created this.
so definitely you found a loop to connect those two things, because I couldn't see the dots. But anyway, I'll send you a meme later. So in Huis, Francie, the way that Vice-Prim differs from Prim is that the Prim handles all the constitutional things, like all the rules, all the meetings on the Stellenbosch campus, all the things that faculty keep in secret and don't want to share with us. And the Vice-Prim deals with the team. So I work on the discipline in the house, safety of the house, and how the Haka functions as a team. And definitely there are constitutional things, but I have given up reading the Constitution, which is not a good thing. I don't advise this for anyone that wants to become VP. Maybe read the Constitution twice in your term. I read it my first term and then I never did it again. So there are definitely constitutional differences, but on our Haka, we are seen as a pair. And I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing, because then it sort of makes it like it's the Haka against the VP and Prim, and only them two speak to each other and the Haka speak to them. So to avoid that division, we don't like promote it that way. But definitely there's a very strong connection and bond between the Vice-Prims and Prims of Huis Francie. And then, like I said, team management. So now you have to learn 12 new different personalities and need to find a way for everyone to work together. And I think synergy is a big thing on Tygerberg campus. We want to function together, not apart. So what drives Francie Haka necessarily is helping each other. Like, yes, there are portfolios. Yes, we divide them, but we try and find a way to get everyone involved, to make the workload less and to make the stress less. And then another way that it differs is that it also definitely depends on the personality types, because right now the Prim of Francis Tiamo, and the two of us were very different but very similar. So where Tiamo, you won't really just go to Tiamo and talk to her about the minor inconveniences you have with your portfolio, and then that's where I'm a bit more approachable. And they won't necessarily come to me when they have serious or maybe, let's say, constitutional problems. They'll go to Tiamo. And that is how we find the balance to work. Sorry, I don't know why I'm getting shaky, but that's how we find the balance to work with the team and to work with each other. So there is a difference, but we're really just a support system for each other. And I think when we find that connection, because I don't know, there might be prims and VPs out there that don't even speak to each other and they just work and function on what they need to do. But I've seen, and what I've seen and what I've learned is that it's better when the two focus on their individual tasks, but work on it together, because it just creates a working environment that is less stressful. And that I really thought that VP was going to be a stressful position because you have so many and people to deal with and so many portfolios. Because essentially, I need to know what happens in every portfolio, and that gets tough. But you figure it out. You ins and outs. You ask someone else, listen, what do you do? And then you figure it out. But that's all really that I could say on that. I don't know if the other VPs, they probably have something different to say, most definitely. But that's my take on it.
Nice. No, we love to hear it. We do want your take. We want your experience and your perspective of it. So thank you. Yeah, so it seems in Francie it's very discipline based and very much team dynamics is your focus, which is, I think you will definitely know when you're applying if that is something that you are cut out for, and if that is something you're willing to dedicate yourself to for a year, or team dynamics and discipline and just generally making sure that your team is working and fine. Yeah, and just I guess it's up to the Vice-Prim how you approach team dynamics, and that is, do you want your team to all get along and be kumbaya, or is it fine if the team doesn't get along, but you're aware of what everyone is doing in their portfolio and that everyone is working in their portfolio? And it's actually a really amazing way to serve the house. People might think that it is you're just watching what everyone else is doing, but making sure that people are committing to the little things that they said they would do that will actually impact the house positively is the greatest act of service, because you are making sure that your team is actually producing the results that they promise to produce. So really amazing. Yeah, it seems like if you want to be Vice-Prim in Francie, have your strategies on how to get people to achieve the best that they can individually to make the team excel. Beautiful. Thank you, Shannen. Leanne, I saw you nodding quite a bit when Shannen was speaking. So I'll come to you because your nods have drawn me through. So yeah, what's your take on this?
It's a very interesting question because it's one thing I struggled with for when I stepped into the position of Vice-Prim, is because the position between Prim and Vice-Prim is quite blurry. That line is very, very blurry. I needed a solid, what is my role and what is the Prim's role? Am I stepping into your role now where it's hindering me from performing my role efficiently? Or I needed that division so that I know what my outcomes need to be. And we only established that a bit later in our term. But Shannen summed it up really nicely, where I know, especially in Meerhoff, both positions of Prim and Vice-Prim are very much admin orientated. I never expected it to be so much admin, but it's very, very much admin orientated. But the only difference is that with Prim, it's more admin associated with the res, so the house at large. So you're writing proof of residence, it's house meetings. So the Prim is very much the outer face of our residents as well as the inner face, whereas the Vice-Prim's role is very admin orientated, but within her team. And that's what I love because it was a smaller scale and it was admin orientated, which I enjoyed doing. So your job is to make sure portfolios are up to date. Your job is sometimes just to coddle some team members so that they can get the job done. Sometimes you really need to be stern and hold them accountable to their actions. So your role is admin, but within the team, where the Prim would be not really within the team, but a bit for the greater house. And in Meerhoff, how I know it works with us is that the Prim deals with discipline. So that's her main portfolio. But it's a bit odd for her to deal with discipline alone if I'm holding my team accountable for their actions. So that's why she'd bring me in there. But constitutionally, discipline is a Prim's role in Meerhoff.
Sure. I love that. I literally wrote in my notes, Meerhoff parent. It seems that the Vice-Prim definitely becomes the parent of the team. I remember as well when I was Prim, I used to tell Sleep, my Vice-Prim, that she is the team's mom. And I tell the team that this is your mom. Like, just accept it. This is your mom. Yeah. And I really love all the like parenting styles that you were breaking down. And that is sometimes you do have to coddle. Sometimes you do have to comfort a team member. And sometimes it is that you have to be really stern. Like any good parent would be. It's not because you want to break down anyone in your team. You do what you need to do depending on the context. But the goal at the end of the day is that people are committing to what they said that they would do and are actually healthy and fit enough to do the thing that they said they want to do. Yeah, wow, I love it. I actually have a follow-up question for you, and I'm wondering if I should ask it now or after Chris speaks. I'll ask it after Chris speaks, because maybe you can all touch on it. Yeah, Chris, I'll come to you.
Yeah, I think a lot of what Leanne and Shannen said pretty much sums up what I wanted to say. I like the analogy of bridges. So basically, the Vice-Prim as a bridge between the House Committee members and the Prim as a bridge to larger communities, you know, university communities, other structures. And what Leanne really resonated, what she said really resonated with me about there being a blurred line in roles. Because for myself, I'm very much, I like to know, okay, this is what I have to do, then I'll do it, you know. But yeah, I think it also depends on the team, because I know for us, khakis back in the day, we only had 7 House Committee members. That's including the Vice-Prim and the Prim. So yeah, things were definitely different. So we had to redefine roles constantly, shift portfolios and shift responsibility. So that was very much blurred. But yeah, I definitely agree with what Shannen said about synergy. You know, as much as you have different roles and maybe, you know, you have one task that you both have the responsibility to carry out. If you have the synergy, everything's so much easier. And yeah, I think a big point is, I don't know, personality types. I think people, maybe if they would consider themselves as introverted, I know I would, there's definitely a spectrum of introversion to extroversion, you know, somewhere in between. And I think traditionally, the Vice-Prim's role would seem to be more leaning towards introversion, because, you know, you're doing a lot of background work. You maybe not, how can I say, as you know, you might be the security and safety portfolio person. So you're literally preventing fires, but also metaphorically preventing fires that might happen, you know, within the team and within the house. And then the Prim's role would be to actually put those fires out when they arrive. So that's pretty much how I understand it. Yeah.
Epic. Okay, Chris, we see you. We see you. There's always someone that comes with the quotes, like they show you that they're prepared to write a book about this. Okay. So Vice-Prims prevent the fires, Prims put out the fires when they come. I love it. I made that note. I wrote it down. I'll probably caption it in the YouTube video. Who knows? Yeah, I really, really like your analogy on bridge, the bridge analogy. Yeah, I don't think I even need to add to it because you broke it down really nicely. Okay, so what I'm hearing from all three of you makes my follow-up question relevant for all three of you. So Leanne, you don't need to stress, it's not just you. Clearly what you're all saying is you definitely have a very close relation with your team members and with the work that they are doing in their spaces, in their individual portfolios. So I'd like to know from the three of you, how did you prevent yourselves? How did you manage? How did you ensure that you weren't micromanaging the various portfolios? Or maybe you did micromanage and you learned from that, and what do you wish you had done differently? But I think when you come in with the mentality that your role is very much to make sure that people are doing their job in their portfolio, it's very easy to end up micromanaging and getting really burnt out, because instead of having one portfolio of Vice-Prim, you then become 7, 16, 14 portfolios. And the two roles actually, they're different. Once you micromanage, you get burnt out. So how did you resist the micromanagement bug? How did you practically approach ensuring that your team was actually doing the things that they needed to do without you yourselves necessarily always having to step in and do it? Leanne, I'll start with you because you really did. You sparked this.
That's a really good question. And when I say it's a good question, I actually have no solid answer to it. But the first thing that comes to mind is that your relationship is with your team. And in saying that, you need to know every team member's personality. So there was a stage in my term where I was managing everyone. But as time went along, I realized some individuals need micromanaging. Otherwise, the job's not going to be done. So those type of members are ones where you give them a strict deadline, but allow leniency of maybe 3 days on your side, just to ensure that the job is done. Because no members in the team is the exact same. And another crucial point I learned in my term is to prevent you from micromanaging every single one, you need to get the skill of listening before even offering an opinion. You need to sit down and listen to your members' ideas, their dreams for their portfolios. And in your mind, you can be thinking, that is big, there's no funds for that. But before even offering that opinion, you need to sit down and give them your ear and just let them know that, okay, I hear your ideas. Now, how can we shape this and sort of make it sizable for our term? So in my term, I know I had members that needed to be micromanaged, and they didn't even know they were being micromanaged.
Well, they're going to watch me. They'll know. They'll be in your DMs.
Yes.
They'll be like, how dare you?
100%. And then other members, if you try and micromanage them, they will tell you, you're stepping into my portfolio now, step back into yours and just manage it. So that's how I dealt with it.
Sure. Okay, nice. I wrote quite a bit of actually quite a lot of notes here. When you're talking about, if you know that you have a team member who, if you give them a specific deadline, you'll give yourself maybe 3 days after that, because you know how they are. Just that 3 days of leniency. And what that's actually speaking to is being Vice-Prim doesn't mean that you are a powerful being whose word is what sticks with your team. Like, they have to do it your way and no other way. If it means that this particular team member is very sure of themselves or whatever they're going through in their life, And when you tell them today, to them it means tomorrow, and not even because it's not done today, just because you said today, they will now want to submit it tomorrow. Don't get caught in that exhausting battle of going, I'm in charge, not you. Rather go, okay, this is your personality. The way that it's going to work then best for the team is if I let you be like this, but always make space for the 3 days when you're going to submit it later. And I mean, it's not always going to be a submission of a report or whatever. It could be any type of scenario where you know someone has a really strong personality, and you really don't want to exhaust yourself trying to look like you are in control of everything. Understand your personalities, understand the personalities of your team members. Yeah, it helps. It helps with your own stress levels. It really does. Instead of being frustrated that they submitted late, know that they're going to submit late, as long as it's not jeopardizing your house or your PSO. And I really loved the listen before trying to solve the problem. They teach us that in mentoring, like in mentorship, that a lot of the time the person coming to you for advice actually has the advice that they need with them already. They just want you to listen. Yeah, and I love that in the example that you were giving, even you listen to someone's situation, and even afterwards your response wasn't, we don't have the budget for this, or this is unrealistic. It was a question. It was, okay, so how can we then make your idea fit with the budget that we've been given? So that makes the person feel like it's not an instruction coming from you, it's advice coming from you, but it's still their idea and still their portfolio, and they're still in charge of what's going on. So yeah, really subtle things like that, where you're not always trying to take power and own the moment with your team. Beautiful. Wow. Okay. Shannen, let's come to you.
Oh, definitely COVID-19 helped with the micromanaging thing. Like when COVID said go home, I was like, okay, I'll go home. But I also learned from you, Wama, because last year, or with 2018, 2019 term, there was a part where Wama didn't ask anything about your portfolio. And then all of a sudden, say March, then she's on your case. She's sending you voice notes, like 4 to 5 to listen to. And then she identified it as micromanagement. And when I applied for VP, then we had these accountability meetings. And I remember asking her about, like, listen, how can I just avoid the micromanagement thing? Because it definitely stressed you out. And then I also spoke to my mom about it. And then the one thing that came up the whole time was just delegate. Like, you don't have to manage the portfolio if you see that it's not going according to what you want it to be. And that's also another thing for Vice-Prims. You apply to be Vice-Prim, and then you find out that you have to be a manager of all these portfolios. Then you start creating ideas of what you want the portfolios to be like. And that's dangerous, because I'm not imagining the same haze dance as the haka member, and I'm not imagining the same social events as the social haka, or I'm not seeing the same cultural critical engagement talks as the critical engagement haka. And then that becomes dangerous. I think that's a bit worse than micromanagement, when you start directing them in the direction that you want your idea to become visible. And with micromanagement, for me, because I had it in the back of my mind from the start of my term, I already identified listen, you're going to need deadlines for this one, and that one, they'll get the job done. They'll even do it before you ask for it. So I summed the team up like that in a bit. And when it came to discussing our calendar, because that's also another thing that we do, and you put down all the events that you're projecting for the year. And when it came down to that, the ambition, the ambition, like, tops, guys, you have great ideas, but really. So I was just like, yeah, so we don't really have money, but okay. And then
Yeah.
that's when Leanne's advice came in, and then you'd look and you'd write it down. Oh, you write it down on the calendar, but in the back of your mind, you're like, so another conversation I have to have over coffee that I don't have and sugar that I don't drink. So you start figuring out how to like diffuse the situation. But when it comes to micromanagement, the safest way is to actually have conversations with your hawker. I think also, I'm just going to say it. I don't know if it's in the next few questions, but you're not going to like everyone on your hawker team. So that's going to prevent you from wanting to engage in a normal conversation with them, because in a way, you don't really care for their opinions and ideas. You just want them to do their jobs. And professionalism also comes in there, but that's also when you have to understand your role, that you're going to have to communicate, like speak to them, ask them, listen, how do you see your portfolio panning out? And when there is a problem, also ask questions like, how do you think you're going to need my help in this? Or what do you want me to do? Don't say it with an attitude, but just like say it nicer.
Yeah.
But that's the approach that I took, that the conversations that you need to have definitely help you with micromanagement, because it puts your mind at ease as well. So that's my answer.
Mm. Yo, thank you, Shannen. I wrote here, you mentioned like solid goal point there where you were talking about making sure that it's not your vision for the portfolio that you're trying to push the team member towards, but you're actually helping your fellow team member to fulfill their vision for the portfolio. So even if it is highly ambitious or unrealistic, or there is no budget for it, you're still helping them re-strategize and rethink to reach their goal, not what you had in the back of your mind that they should do with the portfolio. Beautiful. Thank you, Shannen. Chris, you've had ample time to think this one through. So hit us with some wisdom here.
Yeah, this is a good question. But yeah, I'll keep it short. So yeah, I think a big thing for me, I wouldn't consider myself as a micromanager, but I agree with the point that there's such a diverse dynamic in a team that you can have. I know in my team especially, we had one person who was, maybe in your head you're like, cool, on my calendar this should be done by this date, and in their heads it's done a month before that. And then you get someone else who'll be like, oh, that's in my portfolio, didn't know that, cool. So yeah, you definitely have to I think keep conversation, as Shannen was saying, check in with them. They don't have to like you, but they should know that they can open up to you. And I think redefining of vision is an important thing, because they may have a vision, and they need to be aware that, is this realistic? Is this okay, cool, let's adjust this, and let's align this with what we want to achieve as a house, in a bigger sense. But yeah, I think one important thing definitely is to first make that personal connection. I know now during COVID, I can't imagine how challenging it is.
Sure.
But yeah, just as a vice-prim and that bridge to just, first of all, check in with their well-being. And then I think it's easier to work with someone if you have that sort of accountability and that sort of working relationship. Yeah, I think that makes it easier.
Sure. Beautiful. Listen to those wise words, people. I knew you'd hit us with some of that, especially because we gave you extra time to prepare this really refined answer. But thank you, Chris. Yeah, so good. And I'm really loving that you are mentioning investing in that actual personal connection, and not just arriving for your team when you're trying to hold them accountable. Like before things go wrong, you want them to know that you are there for them, not just there to come for them when things are going horribly wrong or the vision is out of control. So really, really good point there is just making that personal connection with your team, so that they don't just see you as this disciplinarian who comes when there's trouble. It's like when your parents use your full name. You don't want that. You don't want to be associated with that with your team. Okay, so given now that the scope of Vice-Prim is very different to that of Prim, you might have different meetings that you sit in on, different committees that you might form part of. I know there was mention of security. Yeah, there might be completely different commitments that you have to Prim. And now, obviously, now you must make these personal connections with your team, make sure that everyone is okay, is coping, that things are going according to plan. So I can only imagine that all of that somehow needs to get penciled into your schedules. And we know that at Tygerberg especially, we do have time. Everyone has time. There's a lot of time to do the things you're passionate about, but people often shy away from doing extra things because they're really worried about the impact it will have on their degree, and the time that they have in a day. So I'm just really interested to know, if I am Vice-Prim, what does, say, my week typically look like? And we're talking meetings that you're in, your schedule, and how did you all find that Vice-Prim affected or impacted your academic setup? Because academics are a big thing at Tygerberg. So did you find that you definitely had to make more time to study? You had to study differently. You needed to use a different strategy to study. So yeah, I think there's two questions in there, and that is more generally the schedule as a Vice-Prim, sorry, and the impact it had on your academics. Please do not share your marks. We're not here for that. We're just here to hear what you had to change and adjust academically because of being Vice-Prim. Chris, I'll start with you because you just finished off.
Cool, yeah. So, that's a big one. I think what's important is to be realistic of how much time and energy you are actually putting into your role. You have a vision, how much are you willing to commit to it, and then to adjust your schedule according to that. So I guess on a week-to-week, for khakis, we'd have our Monday HACA meetings. And then once a month, we'd have maybe the FedEx or student community meeting. But other than that, it would be up to you when you want to meet with your fellow teammates of the House Committee. And then with academics, so if I can give an example, say we have a community interaction in Res, and okay, I really should be, I have a test literally tomorrow, but I don't want to miss this. So, okay, cool, I'm going to study a bit ahead, and maybe I'll leave early, but I'm going to make sure that I'm there at this event, contributing, even if it's just the show face, make that connection, and then go back to the books. But I think what's important is just to prioritize and say, okay, this is where I am academically. This is where I am, what I want to achieve with this role. Be honest with yourself. It's the least you can do for yourself. Yeah, and then just decide from there.
Sure, love that. Yeah, and I love that example that you're giving about wanting to, obviously you want to study. No one really wants to study, but you have to study. But you also know that you have made a commitment to Res and events, and people want to see you present. So it's more about, you have to amp up your self-discipline coming into Vice-Prim. Whereas if you're not a Vice-Prim or you're not in leadership, you could be really loose about how long you're going to stay at that event, for example. Then the difference is, if you are Vice-Prim, for a fact you have 35 minutes or 30 minutes or whatever at that event, and then you have to hop back up to your room. So it's not really that your life gets completely stripped away. It's just you have to be really disciplined about the things you're prioritizing and what you're spending your time on. So good. Leanne, let's come to you.
Chris said everything I was thinking to say. There's absolutely nothing else. It's very important to understand because your priorities change day to day and understanding which one needs your attention for that moment, for that day, for that hour, and just sussing that out. But Chris explained it brilliantly.
Mm, mm. We see you there. We see you. We see you just being like, yeah, it's all been covered. Thank you. Okay, that means the next question I'm starting with you. Got it. Onto the trend. Woody, I'm surprising you. Come in here. Tell us some things.
Hectic. Okay. So this is now in accordance with a sort of a day in the life of a vice-prim, I would guess.
Yeah.
So I've actually been in the background trying to like navigate the opinions of the other vice-prims present and past. And it's actually really different from how things go in Hippo. But there's this backlog of points that have stuck in my head, but that's for another day. So in Hippo, it's quite different, like I said, because you get two of us, especially on the role of VPing. And there's this triangle analogy that we like to use in Hippo, where the two vice prims form the base of the triangle and the prim kind of like forms the apex. That generally just appeals to the vice prims doing most of the dirty work in order for the prim to focus more on public relations and external affairs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But with that said, we like to play around with the whole triangle analogy in the sense that a triangle can shift its base and apex anytime, and it will still be a normal triangle. That being said, we can easily rotate in our roles, and although there are clearly defined scopes of responsibility, we're very fluid in what we give our attention to and how we give our attention to, and we like attacking things as a team instead of just individuals focusing on individual things. My day personally as a vice prim would go in or a week would go in this sense. So the VP role in Hippokrates is divided into two branches because there are two VPs. So one would be, for example, me. One would be focused mainly on the safety portfolio, and the other vice prim will be focused mainly on constitution and accountability. And we all, three of us, the prims, as Luyanda likes to call us, we all share discipline. So a typical week would start maybe with a meeting amidst the three of us a bit before the Haka meeting on Monday. And then we'd sort our issues on how we are going to drive the meeting, the action points we want to get out of the meeting, and the like. And then we'd have the Haka meeting. And then I would then have to go to meet with my safety marshals in delegating slots for door monitoring for the week, in delegating weekly tasks that individual color teams, as they like to be called, would have to focus on different projects for that week. If we are looking at revising emergency procedures in Hippokrates, if we're looking at trying to come up with maybe backup power for the doors during load shedding, stuff that revolves around safety. If then that gets done, Monday would be done. Tuesday would have, for example, APO management debrief with the res head and the prims, and we'd attack the problems of the residences accordingly, and report to the res head if maybe it was not at the house meeting, house committee meeting and the like. So that's where we attack issues on facilities and stuff like that. And then bi-weekly, we also had a meeting with FedEx and the TSR portfolio head for student services. So that's in like all the nitty-gritty on TSS food, on the Tiger Marty's hub and services surrounding the whole campus generally, but specifying them to your own house. And then I'd be free for a bit. Thursday, I'd have the safety think tank on main campus. Then with that, that's generally access to like the bigger pool of safety leaders Stellenbosch wide. And then that's basically how my week went. The other time, I'm either dealing with issues internally, like the other vice-prims were alluding to, in terms of team dynamics, in terms of helping other portfolios with ease of access to resources, with budgeting and the like. So that's mainly where the vice-prims would be focused. I can't really say a lot about Jessie's scope of responsibilities, but she'd have all those meetings and staffies with regards to constitution and revisions and stuff like that. And the prim would be doing all what prims do with regards to cluster prims committee, the TPR, all those things.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Thank you. Geez, it's actually interesting because there's two of you, but it sounds like you're both incredibly, like your schedules are quite, there's quite a bit there. I would have thought because there's two of you, you'd be like, yeah, no, it's just once a week I have something, and then Jess comes through with something the next week. Yo, but that's cool because it means that firstly you have that support of the triangle. Love the triangle analogy. But it's not, you're all equally busy and you're all equally needed. Yeah, which is really cool. Nice. Do you think that every RAIS and PSO, Osla, should consider having two vice-prims?
I actually do. This is something that I wonder why they don't do it, and I guess it's because of I don't know, just how things are done, and maybe other residences being only one sex and stuff like that. But I don't know how I would survive without Jessie. I don't know how I would have survived, because I was able to take all of those other responsibility as a secondary backdrop instead, and then focus on what was primarily my responsibility and be good at it, like really push for excellence in what I was doing. And when we convene, then we have three people who are taking three different things at the same time, and we move on faster. And it kind of like promotes a lot of more efficiency, if I would put it that way. And I would actually really suggest that other houses look into it. I remember when we were joking around with other vice-prims on our way from main campus, Shannen was there. And Jessie and I were laughing at them because we had this triangle analogy and they just aligned. But I really think there's much benefit in considering having two VPs, because you just are able to do more dirty work, in my opinion.
Sure. Okay, thank you for that. It's a really fresh perspective. Maybe the incoming VPs can actually have a young, they should host, what are these things called? A VP conference, and discuss why we don't have the triangle everywhere. Cool, thank you. Thank you for popping in unexpectedly. I'm glad that you're ready there. You're ready to be in the hot seat at any point in time. Jessica, I hope you're not chilling back there. I will come for you. Just know you're not free from the fire yet. Shannen, I haven't forgotten you. Come through. Do you want to add anything here?
Not really. I would like to speak to the VPs that are not as academically inclined as all the previous VPs sounded, because definitely, not saying that I neglect them, it's just, it is one of my priorities, not the biggest one, which it should change. It will change in the near future. But I do know that there are some VPs that have other interests on campus as well, like maybe sports or maybe cultural. And we don't really speak about that. We don't speak about when is your life too busy, or when are you taking on too much. And because we are leaders, we don't want to quit anything. And I know for me personally, that's a tough pill to swallow if someone tells me I must leave something before I've finished or achieved in it what I've wanted to achieve in it. And being VP and having academics and also now having sports and all of these things around you, it finally drove me to answer that question. And it does, being VP does ask from you to maybe prioritize things differently, like Leanne and Vhudi and Christopher has mentioned. And you have to realize that your main priority right now, currently, is your degree. And you should maybe focus on having that as the center. So, to having reshaped my entire year, you can basically say, it was then academics, VP, sports, and then whatever else you want to do. And when do you realize you've taken on too much is when you don't have 15 minutes in a day to just sit and not stress. And I know I sound like a hippie or tree hugger, but if you are too stressed about taking 15 minutes, if you are too stressed about taking 15 minutes for yourself because there's something else that you need to be filling those 15 minutes with, then you've taken on too much. And this is not like a proven fact. You're not going to read it on Google. It was by trial and effect that I realized this, because then you need to now cut things out and add other things on and maybe not take on as much. So then my schedule would typically look by and also things that you've committed to. Like if you are someone that can't exist without singing in the choir, and that is a main part of your personality, you don't have to cut that out. You can cut something else out. And I think that the one constant that we have is we can't cut our degree out, because then nothing is possible without your degree. So decisions. And then so working as a VP, it also then helps you to not micromanage, if that could like just bring in questions here. So to those that aren't as academically inclined, I know I say that and it sounds bad, because then I'm also in the same house as my mom, so whatever I say she can hear. Definitely work on your organizational skills. Be disciplined with yourself, know what your priorities and your goals are, and which one is going to benefit you later in life. So taking a more like spiritual approach to it is prioritize what is important to you in life and make your schedule according to that and stick to it. Because yes, you're going to write a test next week, but then after Friday you don't have a test, so now you have to study. So you need to think about things like that, and prioritize on a smaller scale. Don't do months, never do months. As a VP, you don't know what a month is. Your day is from 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock, from 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock. So take small assertive steps in how you plan your life. That's all I wanted to say.
Sure. I really love the practical thing you mentioned about if you don't have 15 minutes to yourself, like just 15 stress-free minutes. Yeah, it's not like scientifically proven, but I'm actually just thinking now, like, do I actually have 15 minutes to just sit and not worry about the email I haven't responded to, or this and this and this? Yeah. And if you don't have those 15 minutes, work at, like, make that a goal, that as your term goes, each day you're going to give yourself at least 15 minutes, because it is possible to have those 15 minutes, but you spend them worrying about the emails you haven't responded to. So be strict about giving yourself those 15 minutes. And I really love that we've come full circle, because Shannen, what you were saying is essentially being Vice-Prim makes you confront your priorities. And this is why I think a lot of people ask character-based questions at caucus, because they want to know who you are, and more so they want you to know who you are, because being in the position is going to make you confront who you are at your core. So you really want to have that question asked thoroughly before you come into the role, because one way or another, the day-to-day task of being a Vice-Prim is going to make you confront your priorities, who you are, what it is that you actually like to do. Do you like to study? Me, no. But do I like to watch K-pop? Yes. Can I make time to watch K-pop? Yes. Do I struggle to make time to study? Absolutely. But there's time to do both. But it's just, I got confronted with the reality that it's K-pop and then maybe my degree, like some things in between. But you really are going to confront your priorities, or your priorities are going to confront you either way. You're going to know your true self more and more each day that you go. Yeah, love it. Thank you. So I am picking up a few things in terms of some of the commitments and meetings that you sit in as Vice-Prims. And it seems that there is, yes, the aspect of team dynamics and meeting with your team, but there's also a lot of external meetings you're having, be it safety-wise, be it in the TSS, whatever it is. So I would like to hear from, who am I going to ask? I'm going to ask Chris, and I'm going to ask Leanne. I'd like to hear from the two of you where you feel the scope of influence is for a Vice-Prim. If I'm someone who wants to come into the role of Vice-Prim because I really want to make a change at Tygerberg, or in Stellenbosch University, or in the world, and I'm not necessarily sure where the scope of influence of a Vice-Prim is or can be, yeah, just shed some light on where you feel Vice-Prim impacts, be it on a human level with students, on the institutional management level, representing students and staff, whatever it is. If I'm coming into Vice-Prim, where am I going to have the most impact, in your opinion? Yeah, Chris, let's start with you. We haven't heard from you in a while.
Cool. So, yeah, I think it's a really good question, and I think it depends on what your vision, what you envision the role of Vice-Prim to be. And maybe there are limitations in terms of structures that you can, learn about and then redefine. But I think that your scope of influence really depends on where you want to make a difference. So as you said, on the human level, one-on-one, I think that's as important as any other House Committee member. If you can still make that one-on-one human connection, that's important. If you have, I think that's the basis of any change, actually, the one-on-one connection, and then you step it up. I don't know if I can use an example, but yeah, like with conflict management and that sort of influence, one thing I really enjoyed in my role as Vice-Prim was being someone that someone could come to with whatever conflict or whatever they were struggling with. And this, I guess, is on the human level. So, say, for example, it was an inter-resident conflict, and then this was their problem, and you say, okay, this is what we're going through. Can you please help out? So the first thing would be to, acknowledge what their problem is, not invalidate. And then you want to find a common ground with them. Say, okay, this is what the problem is. This is the positive. How do we work together to realign your visions? As great as two opposing visions can be, how do we find common ground in that? And I think there's a lot of room for influence in that, but obviously personality based. And yeah, I think that's pretty much what I wanted to say.
Sure. Thank you, Chris. Yeah. It's a really interesting perspective that you're sharing, because I don't think a lot of people would be thinking of the fact that you might find yourself involved in conflict or in people's conflict as a plus. But while you were speaking, it's clear that it's more that you get the opportunity to be involved in people's conflict as a peace bringer or a problem solver. So it doesn't need to be a scary thing that you have to deal with discipline and have to be involved in people's conflict, because it actually provides you the opportunity to help and bring peace and bring a solution to a problem that maybe roommates have had for years. And because Chris was brave enough to run for Vice-Prim, and with your personal skills and experience, we don't know what maybe you've been doing team dynamic and conflict management courses your whole life since birth. We don't know, but because you took up the role and then you were put in that situation because of your role, you were actually able to bring a solution where no one else would have been able to bring the solution the way you did. So good. Leanne, I hope you're not sweating where you're at. The face is not on the screen.
Not at all. So I think going into a position, especially leadership at university, you're always looking to make the big change. I know I was one of those people that, okay, what can I change? What can I improve? And looking back on my term, it's not always the big things that you're going to achieve, like the big grand things. Yes, there are some magnificent big things that you can achieve. And I know in our term, the one thing we did establish is having a Hawker accountability com and changing a few things in our constitution. Now, those were major, major things, but that didn't come without the pain of figuring out, okay, this needs to be changed now. But we did the groundwork of sussing out, okay, this is not right. And those were the big things. But I think looking back, and without sounding too philosophical, the biggest influence you have is on people. I mean, it's the most enormous impact you can ever have. And as a VP, that is your privilege. It's your job to work with 12 people and to influence them, not only their portfolios, but influence them. And it's such an enormous privilege. And I don't think people always realize it in the position, but now looking back, it's so wonderful. I know the biggest thing for me was right at the beginning of my term, seeing all my members and seeing, wow, this person has so much potential here. Imagine what it can look like. And now sitting at the end of my term and not seeing that potential in that person anymore because they used it all up, but it became action. And that is the best feeling, seeing something go from potential to action in your team members. So it's those small things. It's even like having a member of your team always wanting you to double check the emails that person would write because he's not comfortable in his grammar or his spelling. And at the end, those emails wouldn't come through you to go through to the house. He'd be confident enough to send it directly, and it would be a beautifully worded email. So it's always the small things that influence people in your circle, and then they take it to people to their circle, like to their portfolios, like Haystons committee. And I remember one instance, I went back to my floor, and a random person was speaking about how they just came from a Haystons meeting, and the chair of the meeting was so good because everyone was allowed to say what they think and they didn't strike down their opinions. And I could trace it back because that was something I was like, okay, just before you even tell me your opinion, just be willing to listen, and to see that process and just indirectly get back to me. That's the best thing. So in essence, your biggest influence is people. I don't know if Wama frozen.
Oh, on brand. I'm back. I am back. I'm going to assume that everyone heard what you said, Leanne. Yeah, I just don't know if it's going to be on the recording. So I'm going to ask you to repeat it at the end when like everyone is gone. So just be prepared. But I'm sure it was really wise and it was really good. So thank you. All right. So my next question is more personal, I guess. Yeah, it's just based on what you might have faced in your term. So looking back on how your term has been, how your term was, is there a particular challenge or something really difficult that you had to face as Vice-Prim that you still think about to date? Like, how did I get through that? Yeah, and if you're willing to share that with us, please do, or you can like share aspects of it and how you got through it, just in case someone else steps into the role and faces something similar. Yeah, you know, we're trying to give people a heads up before stepping in. So let's start with Shannen.
Okay, so I hope everyone can hear me. So with my personal experience with VP, past and still currently, and I don't want this to like sound like a trend or anything, but definitely take care of your mental health. It is something, a very sensitive topic on our campus, and as much as people are speaking out about it, not everyone wants it to be something that people either know about them or see in them, or it affects your leadership skill, and something like some bizarre idea that keeps you from recognizing it while during your term, and how it affects you, or how being VP affects it, vice versa. My advice for it would be to definitely think about the triggers that you recognize in your term, like in your surroundings, and like what do you hear, or what are the complaints that some of your members come with to you, and you are not equipped to handle it. And I think that is also where your res head and your prim, being, or the exec, because I don't know if the other houses have an exec committee, but France has an exec committee, and that's where your exec committee comes into play. When you recognize the shortcomings that you have with yourself, and how they can then, be a member or be the person that helps. Because yes, we deal with a lot of personalities, and sometimes the problems that some of your teammates come to you, you don't necessarily always have the strength for that, and also not the capacity to deal with it. And that's okay. Like admitting that you're not this great superhuman with a VP on your chest and you're just going to kryptonite through it, that's okay. And also to realize, because during my term, I guess I'm lucky because I've known a few VPs and they were like sued. Wama, or attacked with rules and like having the constitution thrown at you. And I guess I'm lucky to not have been placed in a situation like that, because I think that was my biggest fear. And then also to realize that there is a support structure for vice-prims as well. Like you are not the one that has to clean up the mess the whole time. If you need help, you need to ask, because you have a strong personality, because you wouldn't be in this position if you didn't. So you are, if you don't know it, you are a person that doesn't really like to ask for help, but you love to offer help. And that's a great characteristic to say. I'm not saying there's anything bad in it, but it would be a good time to start and see how you can also ask for help, because it just makes you an effective leader. It makes you a better leader, and eventually a great leader. So then you can go to higher heights. You can, I don't know, become president if you want to, because then you have now figured out your strengths and your weaknesses when you are faced with actual challenges that test those strengths and weaknesses. So personally, I would say don't try and hide from things that challenge you, and don't be afraid to admit that these things challenge you. You as a person have limiting factors, so it's okay to have those limiting factors. It doesn't put you at a disadvantage. It doesn't make me less a VP than Vhudi or Christopher or Leanne or Jess. It it helps add character to your role as a VP in your space, and having people around. I'm actually regretting that I'm not a bit older, because having Leanne and Christopher with Vhudi and Jess and the VPs that I have now, listen, campus would have been bomb. But to have those different support structures, those are the people you can reach out to. And maybe we're all struggling with the same problem and we can fix it together. So, in my personal experience, reach out, ask for help, ask for how to get better, because nothing is perfect, and practice makes perfect if that's what you want to be. But don't be perfect, because then you don't want to learn anymore. So, that is from my experience.
Sure. Beautiful. Yeah. You're not, there's no shame in being vulnerable as a leader. And I think a lot of the time we enter leadership thinking that people expect us to be put together all the time. And being put together is a great thing if you really are put together. But if you are pretending to have it all down and to know everything, you're actually doing it at the expense of the house. So rather be vulnerable and, like Shannen says, know your limits, know when something is challenging you, be honest about something challenging you, and when you know that this is beyond your limiting factor. Yeah, no one is expecting you to have it all together, but everyone is expecting you to be honest. So don't be afraid to be vulnerable with your house. Beautiful. Thank you, Shannen. Chris, I'll come to you.
Cool. So yeah. So we had at our house committee camp, as a committee, we each went around and said one thing that we'd like to improve upon. So mine was that I was very much a conflict avoider. And one thing I wanted to improve about myself is to embrace the conflict, because it is inevitable. But yeah, so not avoid it, but use it for growth. And if I can think in first year we did like Tuckman's stages of group development or something. It's the 4 stages, like forming, storming, norming, performing. So I think that really like put perspective into how it's not just you aren't just gonna perform straight away as a team. There is gonna be a storm. There is gonna be a clashing of visions and goals. And you do need to realign your vision before you can perform. One example was during welcoming week. It was very much a stressful time for everyone involved. But so that there was one instance where if you could feel the tension in the room. Someone had one goal and someone was like, okay, no, this isn't gonna work for me. It's not gonna work, sorry. So yeah, that was a point of, okay, listen, we have to do business, but first let's, what is our goal as a team? And let's work towards that. And as Shannen very well said, show them that you aren't from Krypton. Show them the human side. Put away your pride to say, listen, I don't know what to do in this instance. What would you do? Provide me with some counsel. And if you do make the mistake, say, okay, listen, I acknowledge it, because it's a constant journey of self-improvement. You're never going to be, okay, I'm ready. Now I can apply for Vice-Prim. You're always going to be growing. You're always going to be, hopefully, a better leader at the end of your term than beginning you could have imagined. So, yeah, that's pretty much it.
Sure. Thank you, Chris. Yeah. Just the something I want to highlight from what you said. You said put away your pride. Love that, and I think not enough leaders actually embrace what that sentence means before coming into leadership. Put away your pride. I could preach on this, but I am not going to. Just going to leave it at put away your pride. Put away your pride. That is a word for somebody. Thank you, Chris. Leanne, you've been fighting, I don't know, a mosquito, a moth, a fly. I don't know what's happening in that room.
I've been fighting.
Oh, Okay, so tell us your take on this. What challenge did you face? What advice do you have?
Oh, I need to choose. What are two challenges? Because there were plenty. Um, I know the big challenge we faced is that within before we even hit our second round of our term for the last 6 months, we had two resignations. So that was our first biggest challenge. So we had to work with reallocating portfolios, having a whole Haka caucus again, doing that whole thing. I even found myself being an ordinary Haka member with 3 added portfolios just to get them going. So that's one thing I learned with VP is you need to make plans. You really do need to make plans. I mean, your portfolio is essentially dates, but never be so solid in your plans that you're not flexible. So make those plans, but be flexible. Another thing, another challenge I just want to highlight is the how do I approach someone, especially a team member or anyone? How do I approach that person respectfully to keep them accountable to their deadlines, to their actions, or anything, if they don't even respect me, let alone my position? And that speaks to your character and why you're standing there and why people voted you in. It's because of your character. So how do I still maintain my character even when my team members' characters are wishy-washy? And that was a big thing I learned during my term. And the one thing I also learned was I would never ever speak to someone or approach anyone while I'm angry. The amount of walks I'd have to take just to regroup, to come back with a solid solution. Immense. So that's one thing I practically did. Never ever spoke to anyone or approached the problem while I was angry because it would not work out. And how do I maintain respect when respect isn't being reciprocated?
Sure. You know, I giggled a little when you were talking about how when you guys faced the resignations, at some point you had portfolios that you had to take on, because I think I remember you had to organize what is it, Molassaser, and I was like, how in the world is Leanne? Because I mean, I know you. And I was like, how is Leanne planning on tackling this? But it really speaks to it. I love it because it's a very practical example of what you're saying. So you're not just saying these things, you actually did implement them in your term. You weren't so rigid in the fact that you were Vice-Prim and that your role was not to have a specific portfolio necessarily, but to overlook all portfolios. You were flexible enough to go, listen, what's going to benefit the team in the house now is that I need to take on this portfolio and actually do a little stuff, like do some of the dirty work in there, and then hand it over to someone once they come in. Yeah, I think that is something that I think as leaders, we just need to have a conversation about resignations in general, because I think resignations don't get spoken about enough. And they always have this like negative connotation on your leadership, but it's actually not about that at all. Like the reasons for resignations, you might feel really horrible as a prim or as a vice-prim if you do have a resignation, but at the end of the day, there are certain elements in people's personal lives that you cannot control. No matter how great your leadership is, if the portfolio they have at the time is overwhelming for what they're going through personally, don't take it personally as your leadership style being the reason that someone is resigning. I think I'm just like preaching to myself here, but it's okay. You'll heal from a resignation. That's all. So I don't want to go on for too long because I know we've been here for a while. So I'm going to ask this kind of as a compounded question and as a parting question. So let me just charge my tablet because it's trying to be dramatic. Okay, cool. So here's the question. First part is, considering everything you've been through, considering how the term was, how long it felt or how short it felt, the challenges you faced, all of that, if you today could go back to the you that was filling out that form or however you do it to decide that you to stand for Vice-Prim, before you stepped in for caucus, before you really decided that you were standing for the role that you were in or are in. Yeah, so if this you could go back to that you, knowing the things that this you knows, all the things that this you knows and has seen, would this you tell that you to run for Vice-Prim still? So I'm not asking if you'd extend your term by another year. No. Would you do it all over again, just starting from the beginning? So if you could tell yourself everything you've been through, would you tell yourself to still run for Vice-Prim? And then the second part of my question is for somebody who has listened to this or will be listening to this later, who really just needs that final push for, yeah, I want to run for Vice-Prim. You know, they're on the edge. You know, when you almost made the decision, they're at that point. What is the thing that you want to say to that student who is in that space of, I think I should, I think I should, I think I will, I think I will. They're almost there and they just need to hear one last thing. Be it, just do it, however you want to interpret. You could give them a quote. You could give them a last piece of advice, something you wish someone had told you before. If they're going to forget everything you said before, except for what you'll say there, what is the thing you want to leave them with? So would this you tell that you to run? And what are your final words to someone who really wants this role? Who do we start with for this one? Trying to stall a little for you all so you can get your answers on board. If I was really mean, I'd start with Jessica, but okay. Shannen, come through.
Oh my goodness, I knew it. I knew it. I just had that feeling. So definitely if this me could speak to that me, I'd be like, sis, you're gonna face a pandemic. Fill in the form. Anyway, no shame. That was just a joke to try and lighten the mood of the question. Definitely with knowing what I know now, I would still tell myself to fill in the form. I would do everything over again. I would just change like minor responses, maybe an eye roll here and a sassy comment there and maybe a sarcastic note somewhere, because I later learned that not many people have the same deal. Like some people deal with like crazy situations by just laughing. Others are sarcastic, or when someone is attacking your character, you don't really give them much time or thought. And I should probably just give them like a second of thought before I really just go like, okay, Jesus, you are judging, so let's leave it at that. But definitely I would tell myself to fill in the form, because personally, my leadership style and my personality and the person that I am is needed at that time. And
Sure.
because there are other candidates that are going to run as well, but you are the person that will fill the void in that space. Not taking anything away from the other candidates, but they're great. They definitely serve their purpose in Haka, but you are needed in that time and place. And then for someone that's on the edge of making that decision, I'm going to say, don't let your failures make the decision for you.
Sure.
Because you face a lot of new types of failures on Tygerberg campus, and they can be very traumatic, and they can like chip away at your character, because we all come in to this Tygerberg space being overachievers and competitive individuals. You have never lost a day in your life the way you're going to lose on Tygerberg campus. And for someone that is on the verge of making that decision, I would say don't let your failures make the decision for you.
Sure. That's powerful. I'm low-key like, wow, Shannon, where were you before I applied for things? But really, really good. Yeah, like don't look back on all the things that have gone wrong and let that chip in your confidence be the reason that you are not in the role. And I really love, Shannon, what you said about you're actually needed in that role. Your character, who you are, your knowledge, your skills, you are an asset in that role. Don't look at how, oh, but Leanne would also be good. Chris would also be. Yes, they would be. But if for that time and for that community, the best person for it is you, at least give the community that opportunity to choose you. Wow, we love to hear it. Thank you, Shannon. Let's go to Chris.
Okay, so would I still run? Definitely. I think the biggest part of this journey of being a Vice-Prim and what meant the most to me was the relationships. Yeah, actually, like one of my current closest friends was on my team, the treasurer of the team. And before that, we actually didn't know each other at all.
I wasn't
See you
treasurer
laughing
on
there,
your
Leanne. See you. But yeah. So basically, we only saw each other in passing, and now we're the closest of friends. And it's only through our to the house committee that relationship was, grown, developed. But yeah, advice to someone on the edge. If I throw some basketball in there, I'd say you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. But yeah, you really don't know as Shannon was saying, you really don't know what your limitations are and what you're capable of, or if you could be the perfect person for a certain role until you try it. Yeah, and there will be struggles. You will go through ups and downs, but grow through what you go through.
Yo, grow through what you go through. Did you hear that, people? You're taking notes, Lily, and I see you scribbling. Chris, I really I know your friendship with the treasurer. I think probably all of campus knows your friendship with the treasurer, and it's just beautiful to know that you didn't apply for Vice-Prim going, yeah, I'm going to make a good friend at the end of this. That's all I want. But it was something that came along with the role, and it speaks to the fact that being Vice-Prim isn't all about what you can pour into it. There's actually a lot that it can pour into your life, in growth and just in the connections you make. And there's a lot of positives that can come for you as well for being in the role, not just what positive you can bring to your environment that you're serving. Thank you, Chris. Grow through what you go through. Leanne, round it up with that Leanne wisdom charm.
To follow. But would I run again? 100% I would run again. What would I tell myself? Running again. I would honestly just say thoughts and prayers, honey bunny. Thoughts and prayers. I think everyone goes into a leadership position knowing that there's going to be personal growth. I know I went into VP thinking there's definitely going to be personal growth. But if you're looking for growth, you're going to walk out with lashes on your back most of the time. And that's just the environment that you need for growth. Sure. But you look back and you'll take those lashes and you will take the growth as well. It comes hand in hand. So I would definitely run again if I was baby me. And to anyone that's on the edge, I once asked someone that was running for a very sketchy position why in the world they'd want to run for that specific leadership position on campus. And her answer was simply, why not me? Why not me? And I think that answer really propels you into a next level perspective of yourself, because it makes you actually think, actually, I am the one. Why in the world not me? So if you're thinking of running and you're still hesitant, why not you then? Really, why not you?
Sure. Why not me? Why not me? I think I should ask the SRC communications officer to just like tweet that everywhere. Why not you? Why not you? Yeah, that's very, very true. And I think we are so good at convincing ourselves why we are not going to be the best person for the role or why it won't work, the schedule, da 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 da. But honestly, asking yourself the question of why not me and answering not with the intent of actually bringing out all the things that are making you not equipped for the role, make you think you're not equipped for the role, but actually answer it with the positives. Like, actually, this is why me, because X, Y, X, Y, X, Y, and Z, Z, Z. Yeah, I think a lot of the time we pay too much attention to the part of the brain that is telling you why you cannot do it. But the fact that you're on the edge already, the fact that you're in this interview to listen, the fact that you've downloaded that application, the fact that you know the email is coming on XYZ date for your community or it's already come, you've already taken that step. You've already gotten that interested in doing this. That means that there's a part in your head that genuinely believes you can. So why not listen to that part of your brain as much as you're listening to the part that's going, not going to be able to do it. Wow. Leanne, I'm just going to ask you to stick around afterwards because you need to repeat what you said earlier when the recording cut. We love repetition. But that's it from me. That's it from my line of fiery hard questions. I hope it wasn't that bad. But I think this was definitely enlightening for someone who is interested in being the next Vice-Prim in their community, who had questions, who had doubts, who had worries. Thank you for being honest and for being raw, and for taking the time to just share from your experience. You really have nothing to gain from this. I'm not going to sign you all a check or something. This is you taking time in your lockdown to invest in the future of the next generation of leadership or the next term of leadership. So this really just shows how invested you all are in leadership beyond the fact that you were in the role and you got whatever you got out the role and then say goodbye. You are willing to come back to make sure that the role is stewarded well into the future. So that really speaks to your characters while you were leading. And it's just beautiful to see that these were the personalities and these were the spirits and hearts we had in the role of Vice-Prim. And I'm really hoping that you've passed on your essence to whoever the next Vice-Prims will be. So thank you to you all for the wisdom. I have all the notes for days. I've told everyone that I'm writing a book now. I'm compiling a book from all these interviews because people say the smartest things. I don't know if you know, like you'll watch this back and you won't believe it was you saying the words, but there is so much wisdom that comes out of your answers. So I'm just going to compile a young book and then say I wrote it and I thought it all. But that's it from me. That's it for the interview. Yeah, Leanne's just going to repeat everything she said pretty much from start to finish. But other than that, thank you, Shannen. Thank you, Chris. Vhudi, if you're still here, thank you for doing a young feature. Jessica, thank you for your feature as well, your 50 seconds of fame. We love to see it. Yeah, so have a great night further. Please go rest. Have a peaceful Sunday onwards. And thank you again for coming through. You were all amazing. Goodbye, goodbye. Leanne, you're not allowed to leave. Vhudi, I feel like you should stick around to say he left. He left in me.
It's me, you, and Joe.
Good. We see you. Do you have something you want to
Hello,
add?
hello. Hi.
You need the
Hello.
video for the recording. For
No,
the
no,
YouTube
no,
channel.
no, guys. Really can't.
We want the hair. We really want the hair tutorial.
No, we put it in a bun. Hold on.
Yeah, this is your moment to promo. Just a free promo here. Okay, Leanne, I think I cut out at the question on a challenge you faced. Was it that?
No, it wasn't that one.
No, it really wasn't
Influence.
called challenge. It was influence. Yeah. Yeah. The
Oh,
scope of influence of the Vice-Prim. Yes, yes.
so I really want to say in a nutshell, but you're not going to have it in a nutshell. Um, so I think going into leadership structures at university, you're always looking at how can I influence something, and you're looking for influence in the sense of it being quite big and tangible and quantifiable, but often it's not. Ooh, it's not
Okay.
always those big things.
Yeah.
It's not always those big things that you can see. There are some big things. I know the big things we achieved in our term was establishing a House Committee Accountability Com and really refining some of our constitution. So those were the massive, massive things that have been neglected for years. But your sphere of influence, and it's such a privilege to have this position, your sphere of influence is your 12 members on your team, your immediate members. So without the risk of sounding too philosophical, your biggest influence in life is going to be people. And you have the privilege of VP being so intricately connected to your members to actually have influence in that sphere. So it's the small things. I gave an example of I had someone on my team wasn't always too comfortable with his grammar and their spelling that any email they composed to the house or to a team would always come via me initially, and in the end no email came via me to double check. He just sent it directly to the house, and that was one of the wins. So it's always
Yeah.
a small thing that you see people grow in, and all the
Mhm.
potential you saw in them and they exceed that. That's your sphere of influence in this position.
Sure. I love it. I love it. It's like people understand investing when it comes to money. Like
Mm.
you put money aside so that it grows and then you can do more with that money later. For me, the way people invest in money, that is how I think about investing, but with people. You invest in someone and in someone's growth because you have no idea what you will be able to do through that person or what that person will be able to do through themselves from the growth
Mm.
that the time you invested, the advice, whatever it is that you had to invest in their development. Because maybe now that person will become the speaker for some political party or a really confident secretary general. Who knows? And then one day the
Yeah,
president
who knows, eh?
will remember. They'll be like,
Mm.
no, guys, Leanne, I remember Leanne, she would push me and she would say, I need the confidence to just back myself. I'll write it the way I write it, and I will believe that I've done it the way it needs to be done. I'm proud of it. So I'm going to send it through. You really never know where people are going. At least with money, you
Yeah.
can calculate. But people, there's no formula. So you don't lose anything from investing. Imagine if someone had invested in Hitler. Like you honestly you don't lose anything from investing in trying to make people better people. But maybe there
That's
was
true.
no Swedish
That's
Hitler. Don't know. We tried. Yo, but thank you. Thank you for that wisdom, for that repeated wisdom again. Have a great evening further. I need to put these recordings, I don't know,
I
together
love
or
that
just
it's on record.
you. Um, yeah, Joji Sam, I don't know if you want to do an exit outtake to the recording, promo your
No,
hair.
just I really enjoyed the chat. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you for coming. Thank you for enjoying it. We love to see people enjoy it. All right, then I shall stop the recording. Thank you to everyone who listened, who tuned into YouTube, to our Spotify podcast, the day that it is up on Spotify. Yeah, and to our panelists and to our last remaining panelist who stuck around to even repeat herself with the wisdom. Thank you, everybody. Good night. That's it from me. See you. Oh, I didn't stop the recording.